You are listening to Insights from the Conference Board.
Hello, my name is Robin Erickson, and I'm a principal researcher in the Human Capital Center at the Conference Board. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this edition of Insights. The Conference Board is committed to helping organizations navigate through this turbulent time. In addition to tracking the economic ramifications of COVID-19, the Conference Board has recently published more than 20 short reports covering many of the ways human capital has responded to the changing business environment in the context of their workforces. All of our COVID-related reports can be found on the Human Capital Curated Resources page of the Conference Board's COVID-19 Hub at www.conference-board.org. Today, my colleague and co-author Amanda Popela is joining me to discuss the results from two recently published surveys about organizational and employee readiness to return to the workplace. Hi, Amanda. Tell us about the background of the first survey.
Yeah, thanks, Robin. So in the first survey, we'd heard that many businesses had hoped to reopen their workplace after Labor Day. So in early September, they were looking to reopen. So we decided at the end of August to conduct our first rapid response survey to find out when U.S. organizations were planning to reopen a workplace, and also to look at the safeguarding measures that they were taking as they look to reopen. We launched a really short 3-question online survey from August 19th to the 26th, and we polled more than 1,100 business leaders across U.S. city centers. We had 20 metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, that we were looking at. So 1,100 leaders in these 20 MSAs. The respondents were primarily C-suite leaders, executive vice presidents, senior vice presidents, senior managers, so really kind of across the spectrum of senior leadership, and they represented a cross-section of industries as well across the U.S. And our responses suggest really a long and uncertain road ahead of us when it comes to reopening the workplace. About a third of our respondents, so 35%, said that the timing of when their company is going to reopen is still unknown. And only 13% that said that they had opened already. So this was in August. So 13% had either remained open throughout the pandemic or had opened by August. And then we had another 39% that said that they plan to reopen by the first quarter of 2021. So a good number of respondents, about half, will be opened by first quarter, or at least that's the plan right now. But it was interesting that only 5% thought that the widespread availability of a vaccine would be a significant factor for them and when they would return. And this finding was really interesting to us because there's a few things that might be going on here. The low ranking could reflect a concern about the viability of a vaccine, especially with shorter clinical trial times, or it could also be a concern about the legal implications for using a vaccine as a condition for a return to the office. But either way, we do expect that all of these plans for returning could change if there's an increase in COVID-19 related deaths and hospitalizations this fall.
And as Amanda said, we also asked about the safeguarding measures that organizations are taking prior to returning to the workplace. And not surprisingly, the most frequent ones were among concerns for employee health. So 82% of the organizations that we surveyed had purchased safety equipment. 80% had created new workplace policies that required social distancing. And 78% had prepared workspaces for the return of workers. We also were interested in the least frequent responses, which were providing childcare options for workers. Only 19% of organizations had actually done that. And only 13% of the organizations that we surveyed had implemented safety measures or policies specifically for workers who are taking public transportation. You can understand that that's very significant, especially in the city centers where they need to use public transportation or shared shuttles. But Amanda, what do you think was the most surprising finding in the survey?
We were really surprised to find that only 59% of our respondents, their organizations had chosen to survey workers about their readiness and comfort to return to the workplace. So only 59% are actually surveying their workers to see, are you ready to return, and how comfortable are you with a return? And it's interesting that the businesses that did survey their workers were more likely to put all of the safeguarding measures, Robin, that you just mentioned, in place. And they were much more likely to implement safeguarding measures related to taking public transportation, providing childcare options, and revising work from home policies. And this is important because those were the top three concerns for employees, but they were really low on the overall list of safeguarding measures that organizations are implementing. So basically, these things are more important to employees than their employers might realize. And if, as an employer, you're not surveying your employees, you might not know this and might not be putting those in place. This is a disconnect that really reinforces the need for companies to get buy-in from their people, especially about matters as consequential as this one is during the pandemic.
Thanks so much, Amanda. And we did tell you that it was a short survey with only 3 questions. So that is the summary of the first survey. And after this short break for some announcements, we'll come back and share with you some information about the second survey.
Can you, your team, or your company benefit from insights such as the ones provided in this podcast? They are immediately available when you join the Conference Board, a membership-based think tank that delivers trusted insights for what's ahead. Reaching across industries and geographies, we bring together our noted experts, senior executives from the world's largest companies, and nonpartisan practical research to help you address your most important business issues. Our membership packages are tailored to your organization's unique needs and budget. To learn more about our offerings, go to www.conferenceboard.org and click Join on the top bar to connect with one of our product specialists.
Hello again. I'm Amanda Popila with the Conference Board. Welcome to the second half of our podcast, and thanks for joining my colleague Robin Erickson and me as we discuss employee readiness to return to the workplace. You may remember that I mentioned that only 59% of the organizations that we surveyed in August had asked their employees about their readiness to return to the workplace. When we saw that, we realized that the Conference Board was particularly well positioned to ask employees themselves about their own readiness. So we fielded our second rapid response survey. This one had 4 questions, and we fielded it from September 16th to the 25th in 2020, and we again had over 1,100 respondents to this survey, and these respondents were at multiple levels within the organization, so from individual contributor up to the C-suite and CEO. So, Robin, what were some of the results of the second survey, the Employee Readiness to Return survey?
So probably the most important question was, we asked employees how comfortable they were with returning to the workplace. Only 17% feel very comfortable returning. So that's not a very high number. Those who said that they were moderately comfortable was 39%. And we had almost a third, or 31%, report that they weren't comfortable. And 13% said it depended. And that was dependent on a lot of different factors. So that's 44% saying that they weren't comfortable or it depended. Shows that there's evidence of a high degree of anxiety about returning to the workplace. And suspecting that there would be high levels of apprehension about returning to the workplace, we also asked employees if their organization had a plan for returning. Would it be voluntary or would it be required? And 5% said returning would be required for all. 34% said that returning would be required for some and voluntary for others. And only 17% said that returning would be voluntary for all. But 41% said that it was unknown or other. And obviously, that means that they don't know, and that they're not sure if the dates are going to change or if the plans are going to change. But again, these results from this question as well indicate a high level of uncertainty. And that high level of uncertainty does create a considerable threat to employee well-being, which is around anxiety. And according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, their National Center for Health Statistics, in 2019, at this time of the year in September, 8% of Americans had anxiety disorders. So that was a year ago. As of September 2020, only 1.5% of Americans had been infected with COVID-19. So the number of people who are anxious right now is 17 times the number of people who've actually caught the disease. So do you want to find out the best way to cure anxiety? Tune back in a few weeks for a new podcast with myself and co-author Leo Flanagan. But the survey results also underscore the need that Amanda mentioned earlier for organizations to continuously communicate with their employees. The Conference Board just published the final report in a series of 3 about how organizations can implement a continuous listening program. You can find a link to those reports in the show notes. So Amanda, what did we learn when we asked employees about their concerns about returning to the workplace?
The top employee concerns were contracting COVID-19 personally, exposing their family or dependents to the virus, and a lack of a vaccine. But some groups felt more pressure to return than others did. So, for example, women felt more pressure to return to the workplace in order to keep their jobs than men do. And this is also an expectation that is more greatly felt among the more lower ranking employees. So 20% of individual contributors and 21% of frontline managers feel a pressure to return to the workplace in order to keep their jobs. And this is compared to only 4% of C-suite executives. So the higher up that you go in the organization, the less likely you are to feel that you need to return to keep your job. And also, while individual contributors feel the most pressure to return, they are also the least comfortable in returning. These results again reinforce the need for employers to hear concerns about the pressures that individual contributors and frontline managers especially are facing, and the need to return to the workplace in order to keep their jobs in particular. It's interesting because these groups are probably less likely to be involved in the planning for a return. So they might have less continuous dialogue about what safety measures are in place. They might not have that detailed plan that senior leaders might have. And also, we know that there is a lot of uncertainty here. So just keeping the dialogue going, making sure that employees are informed on what plans are being made will help as you consider a return to work plan. And it's really, not super surprising that these workers would be a little bit more apprehensive about returning. So it's important to keep them informed. A couple other things that I want to mention is not only that employees don't know what safety measures are in place, but they also might not trust their colleagues to take the proper precautions when returning. To follow those safety guidelines. So 29% of respondents had little faith in their colleagues' ability to adhere to safety protocols and guidelines. So that was kind of another interesting take. And one more that I wanted to mention was that productivity has remained high. So about a third of our sample of the employees that responded to our survey said that they thought that their productivity was pretty high while working remotely, and they don't really see a need to go back to the workplace. Women are particularly more likely to say this, that their productivity is high. About 46% of women and 36% of men in our survey said that their productivity has been pretty high.
Thanks so much for sharing those results, Amanda. And we hope that you've enjoyed today's podcast and have a better idea of the current environment around returning to the workplace, both from the organizational and the employee perspective. As I mentioned earlier, the results of these 2 surveys are available to the public on the Human Capital Curated Resources page of the Conference Board's COVID-19 Hub, and they're also listed in the show notes. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us. If you'd like to find out more, please visit our website at www.tcb.org/podcasts or /webcasts for more interactive programs. You can also find our podcasts on other platforms like iTunes or Spotify. Thanks again and have a great day.
This has been Insights from the Conference Board.